Well, before you,
Oh, here we go. Like I said, it'll be a short one, part one of part two, of force versus power. And then next week we'll do more and we'll do a couple techniques. That's the game plan. Today has to be short because I have something I have to do at 12:30. And it took forever for me to get that slot, so I'm not giving it up. So, all right, here we go. Welcome, everyone. I said today we're going to talk about, force versus power. There was a great book written over 20 years ago now called Force versus Power by Dr. David Dawkins. It's like a lot of these things I've noticed. A book will come out and it'll be talked about and people will get into it and then it'll kind of go by the wayside, right? It'll be like, so it's like when you guys go, when we all go to a conference, and I'm going to one this weekend, you'll learn some new techniques. But if you don't practice it, if you don't keep it in your repertoire, it'll go away, right? And so this is one. I remember reading the book back in the day and liking it for a lot of reasons. But he was the one that said, the difference, and it's kind of been revisited by a couple of people with a slightly different bent. But he had this, and on the Facebook page is a chart, and it kind of breaks down, emotions, if you will, emotional states, and what energy level you seem to be in. How they tested it, I don't know, but there's some. This kind of makes sense. Just bear with me. And like the lowest emotion you can be in is shame, right? Shame, right? Guilt is the second lowest. Guilt, if you had a number to it, he says 30, just pick a number, right? But shame is 20. And to me, the difference is guilt sometimes is something you did and you feel guilty over, maybe, or something you didn't do and you feel guilty over. To me, shame is you're guilty that you're alive. You feel bad that you just are, So anyway, so you have guilt and shame, right? And these are the lower emotions, right? And there's a few more in there, and then it jumps to fear. And one of the things now that I know he kind of relooked at a little bit, and some of the people look at it, is, when you get into fear, it's about 100, but fear is not, he prefaced it and he said it was misunderstood, that fear in and of itself is one of those, it's not good and it's not bad, because it could be there to keep you alive, right? If there was a saber-toothed tiger standing there growling at you, you probably should be afraid, right? And it's like, we all had those stories, it's like fear, people, oh, this person's fearless. The only person I had a drill sergeant say once when I was going through training, he's a grizzled, I'm mature, so let's just put it that way. He'd been like 4 tours in Vietnam, and Vietnam was winding down. I was going through this training. Somebody said, well, how do you not be afraid? And he goes, the only people I know that aren't afraid are we left in Vietnam. Right? He goes, I was terrified, right? But, so fear is there to keep you alive. And then we talk about anger, right? And that has an energy of 150. But anger is one of the first emotions that gets you to take action. Fear will get you to also take some action, like to run away. But have you ever done something because you were just pissed off? Right? Right? And anger, can get you motivated, right? The great late Jim Rohn said it was that anger that changed his life. It wasn't an esoteric, it made him think differently, right? Where he was angry at himself that he couldn't afford something for his family, right? So anger can get you to take action. But all of these lower emotions, right? And pride they're force emotions. When you're in these, you have to force yourself to do something, right? And if you're operating from force, it's going to drain your energy, you know. And when you get into there's like two levels, I would look at it, you know, as they're like switch points, which is courage and neutrality, right? But all change, I'll quote someone I like to quote every once in a while. Bill Wilson was stated, all change starts with truth. The truth to have the courage to admit you need help, to admit you don't know something, to admit, maybe say like, whatever I'm doing is not really working long term. Now you can motivate yourself down here, but eventually you'll burn out, right? And so you have to have the truth. You have to hit that level of truth, right, where you start moving into positive emotions. And when you get neutral, it's not apathy. It's just you're not judging what's going on, right? You're not putting it, is this good or bad? It just is, right? Which sounds easy. It's hard to do, right? Because would you admit that like certain forces, right, like governments, like religious organizations, you know, what do they use to motivate you? Guilt, shame, anger, fear, right? Right? They don't want, you know, they could talk about up here of joy and love and reason and acceptance, but then some, not all, they'll stay down here, right? Because if you're in one of these emotions, you're easier to control, right? So, you know, you have to have that courage, you know, is where change starts, is having the courage, is based in truth, you know, that whatever you're doing is not working, right? And if you can't admit that, do you think you could be stuck in pride, right? I'm just going to do it harder. You know, we're just going to do it harder. What you're doing is not working. We're going to do it harder. Right? You ever see big corporations or the government do that? Right? It's like, but even personally, right? With all of us going through massive world changes with COVID, coming out of COVID, you know, the disconnect, in my opinion, about how, you know, when you look at certain numbers, like in the economy, things seem to be going one way, but the media is telling us something totally opposite, right? So you're going back and forth and you don't know where it is. But if you stay stuck down here, of course, they try to get you pissed off about something, you know. As God knows, drag queens are going to destroy America, even though what's the Dr. Millsbaugh, I could ask, what's the statistical probability of drag queens destroying America? How many drag queens are there, for God's sake, right?
Put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, you know, yeah. Well, you know, and if you think about it, it's like, and what I'm going to say next, and even though it's going to be recorded, I'm a proud gun owner. I have guns. I got a lot of guns. My wife has more. But the idea that states will ban a drag show, and if you ask them about weapons like assault rifles, well, we don't want to talk about that, right? But who kills more people, drag queens or assault weapons? We just had one yesterday, but we're not going to talk about that, right? We're going to get mad at something over here, right? Especially something that is not in your world. But anyway, you have the courage to say whatever I'm doing is not working. Great, right? And then you move up into here and you hit this, right? And when you really start moving up, you get into willingness. Are you willing, right? Are you willing to change, right? You might have the courage, you get the truth, you're starting to get the information, but are you willing to change? You know, if your marketing's not working, are you willing to change your marketing, right? Are you willing to look at the new technology and use it? Or are you going to be one of the people standing at Walmart screaming, there's no checkout, people? Yeah, but there's 40 self-checkout things wide open. I want what I want. Right? So are you willing? Do you have the willingness to change? Right? And then when you get up into acceptance, doesn't mean liking. You know, he said, Dr. Dawkins says it in the program I'm the most active in. It always says that acceptance is not approval. It's just what it is. Right? And so when you think about it, you know, the reason we always talk about gratitude shifts you, because when you start focusing on gratitude, it has to pull you out of the negative states and probably put you up into this area, right? Acceptance, being grateful for things, you know. And then you get into the higher levels like reason. Of course, love is the highest, one of the highest, and it goes all the way up to enlightenment. But most of us only hit these high levels occasionally, right? And usually the people that say they aren't. You know, but when you're operating from this level and you can tap into this, if you can align your nervous system to be aligned up in here, you know, then you tap into power. You're not using force, right? But the hardest thing I think you have to do when you get down into this what we'll be working on next time and doing some things, right, is to have the courage to accept the truth, to begin to change, right, is again, you have to set aside your ego. How hard is it to tell people you don't know? Right? How hard is it to say, I don't know how to do that? I can't do that. Contrary to the internet marketing wizards that have the shortcut, the hack, the this, to whatever, you know, I got the shortcut hack for $1 million a month practice. I will give it to you for $497. I don't know about you guys. Those numbers make no goddamn sense in my head. Right? But we want that, right? Because we're, you know, and some of them, you know, it's just interesting. So can you set your ego aside, right? Which is easier said than done, right? And try to stay up into this level of acceptance and willingness, accepting people, places, and things for what they are, right? And to me, you know, in our hypnosis, NLP, and even the coaching world, the most misunderstood thing about the 12-step programs, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous being the main two, is they talk about it's about powerless. It's someone speaking from total ignorance, in my opinion. And there's some big wigs in our field that they're ignorant. And I've said that to their face, right? You know, have you ever been to a 12-step meeting? No. Contempt prior to investigation will leave one in eternal ignorance, but you can choose to stay there. But the whole program, anybody that's ever been there, it tries to stay in this area. First, you have to have the courage to admit you can't do it. You can't stop drinking, drugging, overeating, whatever it is on your own, or doing the marketing if you're going to reach out for help, right? Dropping the pride and the ego, you know, that whatever you're doing is not working. And then you have to become willing, take the action necessary, whatever that is, right? Take the action, right? And then just accept that it's going to work or not work, but you just have to accept it, right? So what we want to do is stay up in here and train our nervous systems to stay up in here. That's the hard part, training our nervous system, because society wants your nervous system down here, right? If you're up in here and you're copacetic, you're feeling grateful, you're accepting, you're willing, you know, you might not want to go out and buy that Bentley, even if you have the money, right? You know, and just think about how some of the marketing is placed to us, right? And it's usually young, and especially if it's geared for young men, it'll always be like, are you angry? You can't afford a Ferrari? It shows a guy probably with a rented Ferrari, from what I understand about most internet marketers, right? And they're leaning on the Ferrari, So you get, again, it's tapping into pride. It's down in here, right? And they really will tap in down in there, right? And anybody that's ever driven a Ferrari, I've been blessed. I've driven a Ferrari, It wasn't what I thought it would be, right? It was fast and all that crap, but it's uncomfortable. Bruce has been in them. They're uncomfortable, and you can't drive it the way it was intended. It'd be like as Bruce likes horses, it'd be like, buying a thoroughbred champion and just looking at it. And then, get mad when But anyway, they get that because they're tapping into this, right? Right. And so, we have to train our nervous system, right, to stay up in here, right? And that's going to be what we go over on part 2, which will be next Wednesday, which will also lead right into the next Wednesday after the NLP Today, which is it'll be March or April 5th. That's also the first Inner Circle coaching session, which will be on, we're going to do a group coaching call. That's what the Inner Circle is. And it's going to be a lot of fun. But the first part on the NLP Today is the part 2 of force versus power, so you don't burn yourself out. Right? So, till next time.